Well, I took part in the invasion of at Normandy in D-Day, and that was the first time that I have actually mingled with blood of people that were survivors of ships that had sunk mines. We were the last ship to pull away from the Susan B. Anthony, a troop ship that had a mine. And luckily, the people that we saved from that troop ship, there were no casualties involved on that. But then immediately after that, we went to the to the SS Harrington, a Liberty ship that was carrying troops that hit a mine, and we had to turn through and bring stretchers on board, and I had blood coming down the handles of the stretchers, onto my clothes, onto my hands, onto my shoes. The decks was slippery with young blood, and we brought them to the fantail of the ship, and the pharmacist may determine who's going in the pot. We put them in two sections, those that were wounded and those that were dead. And that was really the first time I had an intimate feeling of people, were dying. I had seen the ships, I seen the planes coming over Normandy and being shot down, full bombers, and each bomber that came down in an arc and crashed meant at least 16, 17 lives. And shells were coming over our heads from the battleships and the cruisers while the landings were taking place on the beachhead. But handling those stretchers really brought it home. Then the other time was after the war was over in the Atlantic, we were sent out to the Pacific to finish up over there. And they converted the ship to carry the underwater demolition men, which were the frogmen. At that time, now they call them the Navy SEALs. So we were carrying. We went to Hawaii and picked up 90 of them and put them on board along with 50 tons of high explosives. So if anything hit the magazine carrying this 50 tons of tetrathol, I said we would have all been just a big hole in the water. There would have been no survivors whatsoever. But our next invasion, we went out to Lingayen Gulf in the Philippines, northern Luzon. And at that time, we went into the beach, we made our reconnaissance, we had some sniper fire, and that afternoon we were attacked by about 35s. The formation was attacked by about 35 kamikaze planes. And my ship shot down 2 of them. And I had seen I was in a pilot house. I saw one plane heading for the bridge. And I left the pilot house, went into the chart house to try to get as much steel between me and the plane, if it struck, that I could, and crouched at the corner and said a few prayers, and I feel somebody crouched behind me and somebody crouched behind them, and after about a minute went by, and we're still there, we sheepishly looked at each other and got up and went to see what happened. It turned out there was another kamikaze plane coming from the stern, and they must have saw each other, so each one of them veered off, and the one landed on the fantail of the California, and the other one landed behind the bridge of the Louisville cruiser. So we were busy throwing anything over the side to help the fellows that had jumped off these ships, when the fires, when these planes exploded on their decks. But we were spared. Tokyo Rose had broadcast on the air that they were searching for little green ships because they knew that we went ahead of all the landing forces to do reconnaissance work. We had the swimmers on board went to the 6-foot depth. We had cartographers aboard. We made the charts for the landing craft. We marked the channels for the landing craft to go in. And generally, we'd go in like 2 days before the actual invading forces came. So luckily, we managed to get out of Lindenhurst Gulf pretty safely. We had left 2 of our frogmen, about 3 of them we left on the beach because we had to pull out. So overnight, they had to spend on a beach that was still occupied by the Japanese forces. The following day, they sent a small LSM, and these 3 fellows, they swam out to the LSM and they were recovered. But we never got them back, returned back to our ship again. So I can imagine how they must have felt there, being on the beach at a Japanese occupied island and seeing us pull away from them. But they survived. Somebody else got them on there, but they had, I guess they had to bum all the clothes that they needed and toothpaste and everything else because all they had was the swim trunks on, and that was it. So then we went to our next stop. We headed for Iwo Jima, and that's we had to be there about 3 days before D-Day, before the landing forces came to do our reconnaissance. So that was quite a sight to see that rock sticking out of the ocean and knowing that it was infested with Japanese forces. So, so we went in on the eastern side of the island and did our reconnaissance work. Our swimmers went in, and one man was on one of the craft that dropped the swimmers off. They had to swim up to the 6-foot depth and make their reconnaissance, make the report on the plexiglass that they had strapped to their waist, so that if they got killed, we could still retrieve the information from them. We had cartographers aboard to make the maps for the landing craft to follow. But the thing was that we had to be there 3 days before the invading forces came. So the reconnaissance went off pretty well. At one time, our signalman was leaning over the side of the bridge, and he's looking down into the water, and he says, "Hey Ed, what kind of fish are those?" It wasn't fish, it was sniper fire from the beach, mortar shells that were coming over and landing in the water. Everybody else on the bridge was hugging the deck, and he was standing over there watching the shells plop into the water.